Hi everyone, I hope this video finds you as happy and healthy as you can be. Today I'm going to be going through my Sydney Grace neutral satin collection. I'm going to be swatching them and comparing them to some satins or neutrals that I already have in my collection. And I'm also going to be talking about my experience purchasing from Sydney Grace, particularly as an international customer, and anything else about the brand that I think might be relevant for you to know about. Two things before we get started. The first is that I have an Instagram account. I'm going to post some links below to content I've already created. It could be photos, it could be reels, showing some of the shadows in this collection. The second thing is, I live on a train line. It's actually directly outside my window in which I'm filming this. So you will hear some background noise, and there will be times when I have to cut the video in an odd section so the noise of the trains going past doesn't disturb you. One thing I want to discuss though is that a number of these shadows were gifted to me by the brand. I'm going to denote them where possible with verbal disclosure and disclosure on the screen. As I didn't pay for these shadows, I'm therefore likely to have either a conscious or unconscious bias towards these shadows and or the brand. This is to date also the only gifted product I have received as a content creator. I'm very lucky and grateful to receive these in PR. I do not have a big Instagram account. I do not have a big following. You won't see any other gifted content on this channel because I'm simply not big enough, or brands have told me that my content doesn't fit what they're looking for. That being said, I'm still going to try and provide my honest opinions where possible, but please be aware, as I said before, I may have a conscious or unconscious bias. So I have these shadows in this nice empty palette that I bought from AliExpress. It's not magnetic, by the way. I'm going to decant them into a magnetic palette because it will be easier and neater for swatching, and I'll come back. So here the shadows are transferred onto a magnetic palette. I'm going to be sharing some close-ups of each shadow and some swatches. I have the exposure lowered currently. I have my makeup light here, and I also have a portable light here. I'm going to be adjusting the exposure on different shots depending on what's needed to make the shadow more realistic. So I'm going to be talking about the shadows in 3 groups of 4 shadows, and we're kicking it off with Biscotti. This is a silver with a fair amount of warmth in it. I think you could describe it as a champagne. It really does blur the line between silver and gold. It looks quite silver in the pan, but you'll see what I mean when I swatch it. It's definitely more subdued, and of the 12 shadows that I'm going to show to you today, it doesn't have a sparkle. It could bring a nice natural light to the inner corner or the brow bone, if you like highlighting. It's definitely very hard pressed, and you can see some hard pan in the shadow. I just picked this shadow up and I dug a lot out with my fingernail, so I'm switching to a magnetic tool. This is Sirius Starlight. It's a mid-toned silver and it has sparkles. They are silver to white leaning, I would say. This one is quite lightly pressed, and out of the 12 shadows that I'm showing you today, it definitely has more of a dry texture and doesn't smooth out when swatching as much as the other shadows do. It has a slightly more gritty texture. This is Heart Dog, and this was part of the Temptalia collab, but it's still available as a single. It looks slightly more rosy in person than in these videos, which I would say almost makes it look quite green, like a green gold, but in reality it's more of a taupey gold. This is a gentle gold, I would say. It's lovely because it's not too warm, it's not too orange. I have fair cool tone skin, and so most oranges pull very gold on me, but luckily not this one. This has a shiny, almost metallic finish on it, and when swatching it is very, very smooth. this is a great shadow. This is Immortal, and this was gifted to me by the brand. It's a light rose pink and it has some silver sparkles. It's described on the website as a lavender, but it's definitely more rosy on me, and I hope you can see, particularly alongside my pink leaning skin tone, that it appears more pink than purple, I would say. Now we're moving on to the next row, and this is Peace. If you thought this looked similar to Immortal, you'd be absolutely correct. They do look very similar. This one was also gifted to me by the brand. This one is marginally darker, so I would say it's mid-toned. This is also a shadow that's been described as lavender on the website, but it doesn't look lavender on me. This one, unfortunately, I would say on my pink skin tone looks a bit too warm. So it's not matching with my personal taste. I went through all of the website listings for these shadows, and where I noticed a large discrepancy between my personal experience and the website listing, I wanted to tell you guys. So this one in particular looks very silver and purple on the website. It's quite different in person, which I'm hoping you're going to be able to see from the swatches. Okay, here's my first set of swatches for you. I've turned the exposure up and lowered my light to try and make this as true to life as possible. But I am finding that the camera is in particular struggling with this shadow. It looks more green and cool toned than it is in real life. Let's go through the swatches. So we have Biscotti, Sirius Starlight, Heart Dog, Immortal, and I wanted to include Peace from the second set because I mentioned earlier that these two are very similar. So let's talk about them. So I know I said Biscotti looked more warm toned in person compared to the swatch, and unfortunately it's not being picked up by the camera. But you can hopefully see in relation to the other shades that it's definitely not as sparkly as the others. But it is nonetheless lovely. It has an element of grey in the undertone and a warmer champagne topper to it. It's a true satin. It's such a contrast to Sirius Starlight here, which you can really see. It may even be, I think, a slightly larger particle size than the other shadows, and how it has those kind of suspended silver glitters that kind of twinkle as you move your arm, and you can also see the cool silver base. Now let's talk about Heart Dog. I mentioned this before, but it's a very approachable gold because it doesn't have too much warmth to it. I've worn this as a one and done before, and I think it definitely looks like an expensive shadow on your eyes. It's really lovely. Let's talk about Immortal and Peace, both of which were gifted to me by the brand. You can see Immortal has a lighter, more rosy tone to it, and Peace has more of a darker base with elements of a warm brown. I would also say as well that Immortal has slightly stronger concentration of sparkles than Peace does. So as I mentioned in the shots where I was talking through each pan, this one in particular doesn't work for my skin tone very well because it comes off as almost like a bruise shade, or like I haven't slept in a long time, which is why it doesn't fit really my personal taste to use as like a one and done. I actually wonder from looking at Immortal whether I could use this as a shimmery blush because it is so rosy toned and quite delicate. So now I'm going to turn my phone flash on and show you guys what the shadows look like with the flash on. Here are the shadows with the flash on. I haven't adjusted the exposure. I've just turned the flash on. So you can really see the quantity of sparkles in all of them apart from Biscotti. You can see the silver element to Sirius Starlight, and you can see the difference between Immortal and Peace. I actually think in this light you can see the colour of Biscotti a bit better, although it's still not showing very well, very accurately in these clips. This shadow is called Troops and it was gifted to me by the brand. I would describe this as a rosy brown. I really like this one. It's one of my favorites. It gives smokiness and depth to my eyes with a complement to my skin tone. It looks very silver and purple on the website, same as Peace, but in person, I would describe this as more pink leaning. This is one of my favorites. This is Phosphine. I hope I'm saying that right. I actually haven't looked it up. This one is a cool brown with a bit of warmth, so much so that I would say it looks quite purple on me. And it is similar to Troops, but it certainly has more of a metallic finish. It has silver sparkles as well, which are a nice contrast against the slightly purple base. The final shadow we have in this group is Tiara. You may think this looks quite similar to Sirius Starlight because of the high shine silver finish, but hopefully you'll see when I swatch it that it actually has quite a dark brown base. It has a metallic finish, similar to other shadows in this collection, and it has a dark brown base with a heavy silver sparkle. So here we have the group 2 swatches. This is Peace, which is a repetition from group 1, Troops, which was gifted to me by the brand, Phosphine, and Tiara. So let's go through each of them. Peace is looking less rosy in the swatch than it does in real life, but you can see it has a similar base to Troops. Why I prefer Troops over Peace is the base is more of a warm purple, so it works better for my skin tone. I also like that there is a greater contrast between the base colour and the sparkles on top. Moving on to Phosphine, you can really see that this has silver sparkles in contrast to a mid-tone brown base that nonetheless has an element of purple in it. So I'm glad that I put these two next to each other so you could see. And then Tiara, such a beautiful shade. Doesn't look as dark in person than it does on the swatch, but is just a really nice cool tone brown with a silver that actually reminds me of Biscotti, the topping of this shadow, because it's a silver that's not too cool. Once again, I'm going to turn on my flash. So here we have the shadows with the flash on. The base looks almost like a cherry red of Troops in the camera, but in reality it's less striking in person. And then also with Phosphine, you can really see the variety of colours in the sparkle. You have both gold and silver coming through. And then nothing in particular to say about Tiara other than just how pretty this is. I would say, is this my favourite row of the three? It might be. I definitely know that I love these two very much, and Tiara as well. I love all these three. We're now on to the third group, and this is Rover. It was gifted to me by the brand. It is a neutral brown with gold sparkles. It's definitely warmer in person than on the website. However, I really like this shadow because it is a neutral and brings a certain amount of warmth, but again, as I mentioned before, not too orange on my skin tone, which doesn't work with orange leaning colours. It is quite hard pressed. You can see some hard pan in the middle of the pan there. This is Wondrous Night, and it was gifted to me by the brand. It is a shiny silver brown, so it is quite similar to Tiara from the second group. It has silver dispersed sparkles and a metallic finish, but the base is darker than Tiara. The website photos for this don't really show what it's like at all, if I'm being honest. This is Frosted Morning. This is a cool brown, and I wanted to let everyone know that this contains carmine. You can see the list of shadows that contain carmine on the Sydney Grace website. The cooler, more sparklier twin to Rover is how I would describe it. It's definitely warmer in person than on the website. It's still slightly cool toned, but it's definitely not as grey as the website photos depict. And finally, we have Eclipse. This was gifted to me by the brand. This is a dark brown. It's listed on the website as a medium brown, and it looks like a medium brown in the website photos, but it's a very dark brown. It's almost a black on me. Here's our final group of swatches. We have Rover, Wondrous Night, Frosted Morning, and Eclipse. And all of these were gifted to me by the brand, apart from Frosted Morning. Let's go down the list and talk about them. Rover is very similar to Frosted Morning, which is definitely what I mentioned when I did the individual studies of each pan. And I feel like that translates quite well in this shot. The base of Rover shears out to a slightly lighter, warmer brown, and Frosted Morning shears out well, but it's more of a cool tone and slightly deeper. The sparkles in Frosted Morning bring more of a contrast than that of Rover. The sparkles of Rover are almost the same colour as the base colour. Wondrous Night, I mean, it's just gorgeous, and I mentioned this when I showed it in the pan, but the website photos don't do it justice, and in this camera it looks quite green. It is a beautiful dark brown base with a topper that is almost similar to maybe Heart Dog on top. It is so beautiful, and it's such a shame that the website photos just don't do it justice. It is so sparkly as a shadow that it almost has a metallic finish to it. And then at the end we have Eclipse. As I mentioned before, it is almost a black. It is nonetheless a very gorgeous dark brown, and I think particularly for those with a deeper skin tone, this would work great to give depth without adding anything as severe as black. Now let's turn my flash on and have a look at them with the flash. So here we have the shadows with the flash on. You can see that Rover is the least sparkly of the bunch. Wondrous Night, you can actually see a blend of gold and silver sparkles. And as I said, it looks quite green in this shot, but in reality it is giving overall the effect of a pale gold, or maybe more of a champagne colour in fact. You can see that Frosted Morning has more sparkle than Rover, and the base smudges out just like Rover. With the flash on, you can really see what I mean when I said that Frosted Morning is more sparkly than Rover. Eclipse, the dark espresso base, really shows clearly with the flash on. It has brown sparkles that are not too warm and could almost be considered a mid-tone gold. Swatches are done, so I have selected some GlamShop satins that I noticed were similar, let's not say exactly the same, to these shadows. So I'm going to swatch them out and talk you through the similarities and differences. Okay, so here are my GlamShop shadows swatched next to some shadows that are the most similar from my Sydney Grace collection, although you can see that some of them are very different. So let's go through them. We're starting out with Comet and Pralina from GlamShop next to Heart Dog from Sydney Grace. It looks green in the camera, but in reality it's not, as you may have noticed from the previous shots I've showed you. In terms of similarity, the base is quite similar with Comet. Pralina is too dark and too warm, but you can see that Heart Dog is the more shiny of the two. The two being these two, by the way, Heart Dog and Pralina. Then we have GlamShop Space Mushroom next to Troops and Phosphine. The base of Space Mushroom is almost a mix of the base of these two. And you can see the sparkles of this one are almost blue in comparison to the silver of Phosphine and the more gold tone of Troops. So finally we have Poisonous from GlamShop next to Frosted Morning from Sydney Grace and Eclipse from Sydney Grace. The bases of these are very similar in depth. I would just say that Poisonous is slightly darker and slightly warmer. And then the tone of, in terms of warmth, of Eclipse is very similar. It's just a whole other level of depth. It is so much darker. As with before, let's turn on the flash and see what we find. So we've got the flash on and you can really see the intensity of sparkles for Heart Dog is just much greater than this one, even though the base is very similar. The sparkles of Space Mushroom definitely don't look as blue as they did without the flash, but they are definitely cool toned, and the red brown base I think just makes things often look blue in comparison. There are so many eyeshadows with a red brown base and blue sparkles online. I'm not sure how well the camera will pick this up since this is the lower part of my arm and it's struggling to focus, but the sparkle colour of Poisonous and Eclipse is basically the same. The difference that's coming through is the base color. Okay, the makeup light that I turned off as swatches, I've turned back on. I just want to do some reassembling and some tidying up while I talk about what I use these shadows for, my favorites of the bunch, and talk more about my experience purchasing from the brand and some details about the brand that I thought would be relevant for you all to know. So these eyeshadows are known as satin eyeshadows. I've probably referred to them as satin eyeshadows or shimmer eyeshadows throughout this video. And while I was researching for this video, I couldn't find a standardized definition for satin eyeshadows. But one thing that came up quite a bit in my research was talking about the pearlized finish of these eyeshadows. I recognise that there'll be two types of people that are watching these videos. My friends from the indie makeup community who are used to very sparkly, very intense eyeshadows that may not understand or appreciate the value of satin eyeshadows, or may just not reach for them as part of their own personal taste. And then there are people that use satin eyeshadows all the time because chances are if you buy an eyeshadow palette from the drugstore or even from high-end brands, those shadows will often be satin eyeshadows. I love satin eyeshadows because the pearlized texture to them means that they shine brightly when either on direct sunlight or on the parts of your eye where the light hits first. But in the deeper parts of your eye, like the crease or the shadows around your eye that naturally occur, it creates this very smoky effect. And I also love to use satin eyeshadows for layering as well. So you can use this shadow as a base shadow and add things on top of it. Sheer shadows that don't have a base, for example, or your more sparkly shadows, and use them as toppers. Satin eyeshadows have a variety of uses. I've explained this before in my Instagram posts, but one of the reasons why I love using satin eyeshadows is that matte eyeshadows, they provide a semi-opaque base, whereas satin eyeshadows, because of their intensity, provide an opaque base on which you can add shadows. I will link a reel below that explains exactly what I'm talking about. Another reason why I love satin eyeshadows is their blendability. It's very easy to blend them out because of their more emollient nature. Sometimes I even find them more easy to blend out than matte formulas. Another reason why I love satin shadows, and in particular the Sydney Grace formula, is the longevity. I've tried a lot of these as one and dones, and I have longevity, minimal creasing, minimal fading after 12 hours of wear. My eyelids are fine in the morning, but definitely get some oil by the end of the day, and I just don't have to worry about that when I'm using Sydney Grace eyeshadows in particular. So which ones are my favorite? I'm just gonna hold this palette up and do it off the cuff and not think too much about it. I know I love Heart Dog because of the fact that it's a gold shadow that's not too warm. I feel like I've said this about 5 times already in this video at this point. I know I love Troops and Phosphine, and I know I love Wondrous Night. I do like Rover. Okay, so if I had to choose a top 4 that I could put in a little quad, it would be Heart Dog, Troop, Phosphine, and Wondrous Night. If I could make it a little quintet, I would add Rover in. So let's talk about the last order I placed from Sydney Grace and the experiences that I had. So I placed an order as part of their Christmas in July sale. I have contacted the brand to understand what will be taking place this year, but as of filming this, I've yet to receive a response. When I made the order last year, there was a particular day where you could get 40% off single eyeshadows. So I made a purchase. It contained some neutral shimmers, some colourful shimmers, which I may show in a separate video, and some matte eyeshadows. So in that order, as well as some other things, I had about 30 eyeshadows. So I paid $26, just over $26 for shipping, of which just over $2 was route insurance and $24 was the shipping. Now I recognise that is a lot. I would not normally be happy and willing to spend that much money on shipping. However, this was a one-off opportunity for me to make a bulk order of singles and then formulate my thoughts on the brand and then come back to the brand with the next Christmas in July sale if the brand was doing another good discount on single shadows. So the Christmas in July sale takes place over a number of days, and each day has a particular discount and offer. They vary. Sometimes they'll do 40% off particular palettes. They will do a palette as a gift with purchase after a certain amount. But please note that they don't combine orders. So if you do an order on a Wednesday and a Friday, they will not combine orders, and you will have to pay shipping on each order. They also do a restock sale in October where the same discount is applied. I really appreciate that they do a restock sale because it allows people who missed out with the Christmas in July order to take advantage of the same discounts. They also did Black Friday 2023. I'm not sure if they will do Black Friday this year, and the Black Friday discount was 30% off everything. So the Christmas in July offer, depending on what you are looking for, may actually give you a better discount. So all of the shimmers that I've showcased today are $6.25. That hasn't changed from when I purchased them last year. So you'll be able to get 40% off of them. As a European, I'm not used to taxes being added at checkout, and I noticed a tax breakdown when I checked out. I have asked the brand if taxes are included in the website listing or if they're added on at checkout, but I've yet to receive a response. If I do receive one, I'll update the caption or update the comments. The price of makeup is a very subjective thing, and it's very difficult for people such as myself who are not at the coalface of the industry to understand whether something is worth $6 or not worth $6. What I can say from my personal experience is that the tones of these are very unique and not something that you would necessarily find in the drugstore, nor with indie brands in general, since most of them these days are chasing hyper sparkly and the hyper shifty. These offer a lovely change of pace. Another thing I want to add in the conversation of whether shadows are worth it or not worth it is I am really happy with these shadows because of their longevity. There is something really reassuring about putting something on your eyes and knowing that it is going to be there at the end of the day with minimal budging. And that's what makes these a cherished part of my collection. Another thing I want to add is that the brand definitely has some improvement to go to with regards to showcasing some of these shadows on a variety of skin tones. I've noticed that they definitely like to showcase their pre-made palettes on a variety of skin tones, but the single shadows in particular sometimes only have one skin tone on the website. This is definitely a shame for a variety of reasons, of which you don't need a white woman to explain to you. My personal perspective that I'd like to add to this is particularly these last row would really shine on deeper skin tones, and it would be a shame to not see them showcased on everybody. So that's the end of the information dump. I'm going to be moving on to a little bit of a chatty outro now, so feel free to click off if you don't want to listen to me chatting about something for the next minute or two. We did it, Joe. We did it. And I look like a mess under here. If you're wondering why the angle looks like this, I'm filming with a phone holder that I already have. I'm unemployed right now, and I do not have the funds to be... Excuse me, why are the neighbours just deciding to like shout at each other outside my window? I hope this is useful. I recognise the angle is a bit weird, but I'm using resources I already have, and I hope that the quality... Not sure what quality I'm talking about, but I hope that the quality of this video will help speak for itself instead of good equipment. I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe I think I have the charisma to carry this YouTube channel instead of like good equipment, but anyway. I am going to get some water because my throat is really dry. Hope you have a lovely rest of the day. Go well. I will see you soon.